You the man.
I haven't got the intros actually, unfortunately.
Okay, well then let's go for it.
Should we just go straight in?
Yeah.
I think we're live.
Yeah.
Beauty. That's even better then.
There you go. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, one and all. I'm so glad you've all joined us today. Welcome once again to another Trotec Laser Live on Fridays. I am back once again by my esteemed colleagues, Tim and Dave. How are you, gentlemen?
Good. How are you doing today, Don?
Very well. I'm entering my Steve Jobs era, as is clear.
Turtleneck. I got it. Get me one of those.
Yes. I don't know what's prompted this particular outfit for today, but I'm pleased with it. We've also got a couple of our colleagues. We've got Gabe and Corey helping us in the background, so a big thank you to them as always. I will say this stream, just like the one we did last month, is very much centered around our software Ruby. If you're not familiar with Ruby, we will be talking about it all throughout this stream, but it is our primary software that comes with every Trotec Laser. It is a fantastic piece of kit, and we aim to explain to you why we think so today throughout the next hour or so. If you are already familiar with Ruby, or even if this is your first time ever seeing it, we'd invite you to drop your questions live into the chat. We are here to answer your questions. We love talking about Ruby, but more interesting for us is just to be able to engage with you guys, find out, either where you're struggling with Ruby, what you'd like to know more about with Ruby. And I will turn it over to my two very, very esteemed and very talented colleagues here, and they will be able to help us out. So a huge thank you to everybody for joining us. Morning from Los Angeles. Awesome. Artistic Gifts. Tomas, thank you both for joining us. Again, everybody, feel free to drop your questions in the chat. I don't want to banter on for too long here. I'm going to kick us off with a question I believe we may have touched off on a little bit in our last recording, but it was one that I just spoke about with a customer this morning, and I wanted to come back around to it. I think if you've ever seen any videos of Ruby running, be it on the Trotec Laser YouTube channel, be it in one of these webinars, whatever it might be, you will see that it is largely a web-based software. There are also web-based software. I know certain other competitor machines who shall be unmentioned require things like subscription services, or they require that you be always online for the machine to work, this kind of thing. I will throw this question over to Tim really quickly. If I ask you, is Ruby online, or does it have to be online to work? What would be the response there?
No, Ruby does not work online. It's if you are downloading Ruby for a Speedy 100 or Speedy 300, you'll be able to see in the web address of the web page you open, you are using a localhost connection. You are using a physical connection from your laptop to the machine, so you do not need an internet connection. The only time you will need an internet connection is when you are installing Ruby, when you are logging into Ruby for the first time, and when you need to drag the configuration of your machine down from our servers. After that, you don't need a single bit of internet connection. You are using the IP address sent in from your computer to communicate with your network. That does not need an internet connection. An IP address is just a little nickname your router gives to every device that's connected to it. So the same principle for the run on Ruby machines. They all use an internal PC. Once you connect your run Ruby machine to your network, it is given its nickname of an IP address, which then communicates with your computer, which also has an IP address. So these two nicknames are communicating with each other. They are not communicating over a network. They're simply communicating over and through your router. The same principle would apply for a network printer you may have in your office or home. You plug it into an Ethernet cable. You're not using an internet to communicate or send anything to this printer. You're simply using a different facet of communicating through cables to communicate what you want to do.
I should specify too that although, you guys correct me, I could be wrong here, I think, but although someone may be able to connect remotely to your Ruby to submit jobs or add new jobs to the queue, that kind of thing, it is going to be only the operator. It's going to be that physical computer that's connected to the machine, whether it be the internal one or a freestanding tower, whatever it is, that's going to be able to actually get the machine running.
Yes.
For safety reasons, I assume that is principally also too. I did have somebody ask me if you could get around that with a VPN, to which I responded, absolutely not. Do not ever do that for any reason, please. The reason that Ruby has to be operated by the operator, number one, all of the operators I've ever met of Trotec machines are not only wonderful, shining people, but then also, that is their expertise. I think one of the cool benefits of having that sort of separation between, if you have a designer or a client who's submitting jobs, and then you have your operator who's focusing specifically on the operation of the machine, the mechanical upkeep of the machine, that kind of thing. It allows each individual to focus on what they're best at. It's your operator's not being forced to make graphic design decisions on your file, and your designer is not forced to optimize their file necessarily for the laser. The operator can kind of do that at runtime. I should ask though, we touched on this again briefly last time, but I want to cover it off really quickly. Dave, you mentioned last time about how often Ruby is updated, because that is obviously something that you will need the internet connection for. And how often, if you're just getting into Ruby, should you expect to see updates kind of come through?
Yeah, that is a good question, and it's one I get all the time. And it's actually one advantage of Ruby is the fact that we do update it regularly. Currently, it's being updated 4 times a year, about once a quarter or every 3 months. So it's a pretty simple process, and that is something that previous versions, like Job Control, it was far more difficult to get those updates and to incorporate those updates. New ones literally pop up on your screen of your laser machine with the run-on Ruby machine, or on your computer screen of whatever is installed with Ruby. And then you just click the button, wait 2 or 3 minutes, and the system updates automatically. So you're going to have all the new features, bells and whistles, capabilities overnight. There's no login, nothing you need to do that. So it makes it very, very easy. And of course, you do need internet service for that. As said before, as Tim says, and Don, the system is, I think the misconception out there is that, it's web-based. It's not web-based, it's network-based. And that's the misconception. Network is local, web is global. And that is the difference. And you need that web-based capabilities to download updates and stuff like that. But if you don't have internet, you still have a local network. And that's what the system is running from. And I love your analogy, Tim, about just, any network printer. You buy that cheap printer these days and you just click it on the Wi-Fi and all of a sudden you can send files from your phone. Ruby works just the same way.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm going to say network based from now on, because I think that's a far more accurate. Yeah. Question from DJ Kev here in the chat that I really like. Will Ruby software be made open source, or is it open source? And meaning, can it work with other kinds of laser machines? Maybe I'll toss that back to you, Dave, again.
That is a question that I know they have been toying around with, making a version of Ruby in the future that has abilities to work on other brands of laser. I do know that has been discussed, but as for when or if, I'm not 100% certain. I've never been given a definitive answer. That was, of course, I believe one of the main goals, to eventually allow this software to work with any brand of laser out there. But as it stands right now, of course, we're going to focus on making certain all of our product line works with the Ruby, and then in the future, that could potentially happen.
Yeah. Depending on how Dave answered that question, you guys, you'd see a red dot kind of come into the frame over his heart and then exit back out. I haven't seen anything to this extent. DJ Kev mentions owning a mirror laser and wondering if it would work with it. So as Dave alluded to, I think I've heard the same thing, that I think one day it is certainly on the list of potential priorities.
Yeah.
But right now, I think the focus is trying to Ruby works exclusively on a couple of our product lines. And if you visit troteclaser.com or ruby.troteclaser.com, you can see the roadmap for Ruby in the coming years. And part of that is still just bringing Ruby to all of our internal product lines. That's kind of, I think, a first and foremost priority. And then, moving on to other stuff.
But the platform is being built in a format that could potentially work. And that's the advantage of Ruby.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's exactly the thing. And Seth makes a good point there. So, that was the main selling point for buying the laser, was Ruby. I would say it really depends on who you ask. I think, I would throw it over to you guys. Tim, would you say that Ruby is a main selling point for our lasers, or do you think that, does Ruby represent just kind of the natural evolution of job control? Because in my mind, it is kind of it is wonderful, and I'm really glad our laser users like it. But I think, when I look at it, it just seems like a really turbocharged version of job control.
I think it's the next step in evolution for job control, because again, job control is great, but it was very limited in how we output updates and how we communicate with job control, because job control was from a technician side as well. It was very dependent for the servicing aspect of it too. Everything was serviceable through job control. Ruby's made it a bit easier to not only send out to customers, but it's also made it easier on the internal side for a lot of us, which is greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
Being able to quickly send in an update with Ruby, being able to have all these very major features that are able to be adjusted in Ruby, I think it's the next step that needs to be taken in any software for operating a laser. Being able to have that much more control, that many more feature sets, including with all the new machines with new electronic feature sets. Ruby had to be implemented because job control just wouldn't be able to comprehend the new electronic set of the machines. It just would not be able to work with it correctly. So Ruby had to be made. It just needed to be.
I think, yeah, I couldn't say it any better myself. I think it really represents kind of, as the laser itself continues to grow, it kind of represents the logical outgrowth of where the software has to go. You know, where I think once it would have been acceptable for, you know, having to know the specific, you know, width of a cut line, let's say, for example. These days, if we have the ability to just tell you, like, no, I can just select that and make it a cut line, you know, there's that kind of falls in line with the level of customer experience we want people to have when they're using one of our lasers, right? For sure. I think there was a great question here, pardon me, that I want to pull up. I think, Tim, you might even have something for it. Yes, Ashford Laser Makers channel. In Ruby, can you turn on or off the air assist?
You absolutely can. Absolutely you can.
To be fair to you too, the first time I went to do this, I found it slightly hidden. I didn't know how to do it right away. Personally, somebody had to show me. It might have been Tim, to be honest with you.
So it's hidden away in the material database. Once you open up any material setting in any of the effects, you're going to notice an advanced drop-down menu. Once you click on that advanced drop-down menu, the first option is going to be air assist. You can turn it off or on for that layer that you're running. So whether or not you need it, it's right there available for you.
And that can be done by color as well, which is nice.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. As long as you've got Ruby up there, Tim, I was another quick question from Ashford's about ROI and pricing of jobs. How in job control, you can get the breakdown of time per step. So per, you know, engraving, cutting, that sort of thing. Is that available in Ruby, and kind of what is that analogous to, let's say, in Ruby?
Yeah, so it is available in Ruby. If we head over to the prepare page, let's say here, oh, that's a massive document. Here, let's open up this one here.
Cool looking though.
Yeah, here, so we have
documented to your flash briefing. To hear it, just say,
Sorry.
"That's my flash briefing."
That's okay.
To manage your content.
All right.
Welcome to the stream, Siri. Yeah. Glad to have you.
So when we're in the prepare page, at the very top of the icon list, we do have a calculate job time. It is the icon of a stopwatch. So once you click on this, it's going to calculate based off of the speeds that you've input into the machine. We could see I had a blue pop-up in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen. If it's not in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you're going to see it in the list of jobs. So on the left-hand side, the highlighted job that I have there, we can see the timestamp is 4 minutes, 36 seconds. Now, in Ruby, it doesn't break down how long the engraving is going to be, how long the cutting is going to be, but we can still figure that out as well. If we head over to the right side of the screen where we have our material breakdown and our effect breakdown, if we turn off the cutting, for example, we run the estimate again, we could then get an estimate for only the engraving. So once it pops up, 3 minutes, 57 seconds, that's how much we got for the engraving. So just subtract that time from the original time, and we got the separate time for engraving and for cutting.
This kind of brings up a question that I wanted to bring up at some point. It's a bit of a hot button topic, I guess, but it's something that I think is important to sort of note. It's something I talk about with customers sometimes. I would love to hear from each of you something that, because we've had some questions from customers regarding, you know, what is the timeline for a particular feature being added, and I will harp on this forever, but if there's a particular feature you'd like to see, there's a way right in Ruby to be able to submit feedback. I think Tim is going to show us. Yes. Awesome. Thank you, sir. And they really, I was skeptical at first, but I've been proven time and again that they are really watching this and listening to this. They want to hear what our customers want implemented because they know there are certain things from job control that haven't been brought over to Ruby yet. And so please, I would encourage you to use this form if you're using Ruby. I would love to hear from each of you, if there's something from job control that hasn't been brought over to Ruby yet that you would like to see added. I can go first to let you guys think if you want. And I'm hoping maybe you might be able to tell me, Don, you silly goose, that's actually already in here. Trust me, this is as much for you guys to learn as it is for me to learn. Print merge is a big one for me. So if you're doing serialization, I know that there was a way to do print merge with job control that wasn't necessarily the most intuitive. It is something that I know is on the roadmap for Ruby, but it is something that currently, Ruby is kind of lacking. So after this stream, I'm going to go put in my new idea. I'm curious, from you guys, if there's a particular feature that you would love to see added to Ruby, and whether it's something that job control can do already or not.
Yeah, for me, I've constantly added on this, and I have found this is the easiest way to get new updates, as well as when I have a concern or a problem, you can also attach files onto this. So if you've got a file that isn't quite working the way maybe job control was, for example, the biggest thing that they are working on Ruby, just so everyone knows, is that any of those features that job control had are the next features that are going to be added. You'll get a few other ones that weren't in job control, but the next couple versions, I do know that most of the final features that job control had will be included. And I believe the next update is coming out sometime in October, I believe. So I do know a lot of these features are going to come. One that I have been continuously asking for is the ability to add guidelines. So when you're wanting to be able to like position graphics and be able to drag a guideline down in either the design or the prepare screen, it's just more from a design standpoint personally, but it's one of those things that I have been adding. It's not a real high priority, so it hasn't been added yet, but little things like that'll make as an operator, your job easier. This is a great place to go ahead and add it and see if they can go ahead and add it to the list. And they do, as Don said, they do focus on this. And the more folks out there that mention something and the more consistency they get on a single topic, will add that topic to a more higher priority.
Yeah, you have some fans of that idea in the chat too, Dave. I don't know if you'll see those, but there are some there's some guide advocates. I would also count myself among their numbers personally. Yeah. I'm excited for guides to come. Part of the reason that I'm so excited about mentioning this here too in this webinar is it's almost as if I feel like it will draw greater attention to that particular feature. I will say though, as I believe Tac Templates points out, there are certain ways to kind of work around some of these things, certainly in Ruby, but excited for those things to come up down the line. What about you, Tim? Is there anything that you've run across that you would love to see imported from job control from back in the day? Multi-line text.
Oh God! Well,
oh yeah,
multi-line. I forgot about multi-line text. That is a big one. Multi-line text is still to this day an issue in Ruby. If you try to press enter, it won't go down to the next line.
It's a funny one.
Yeah, for me personally, one that I'm really excited is for web API functions in Ruby. Being able to simply save a file in Adobe Illustrator and have it appear in Ruby is amazing. I've been able to test it because it is on the beta version of the Rubies we've been playing around with, and I will tell you, it's a great feature. I love it. It is coming soon. Not sure when the actual update for it is supposed to be releasing. For the most part, a lot of the trajectory for major updates are in 2024. So the capabilities to work with the Galvos, web API imports, a lot of major changes. So I'm excited for a lot of features that are coming, but mostly the web API imports. That's what I'm mostly excited for. So far, it's pretty stable in the beta testing for it, and I'm really happy with it. It's life changer for me. So I'm excited for that one.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think definitely web API is one that I had forgotten about, but that's a very good point. That's an exciting one for us too. I really, again, I just want to, Dave said it too, I want to hammer home how much I really, really want to encourage you guys to use this form. I know they're watching it. I know they're paying attention. And it is definitely the best way to see, what you'd like added in a future update, moved up the list of the roadmap for the future.
Mhm.
We had some great questions come in from Instagram. I don't know if you guys will be able to pull up either of those kind of on the back end here. Again, a huge thank you to everybody who submitted questions ahead of time before the stream. We're going to be doing more and more of these, I think, again, every third Thursday as best we can in the coming months. So if there are certain things that you'd like to know and it's not necessarily on stream day kind of thing, feel free to throw it, on Instagram, on the comments of this video, that sort of thing. We're always watching those to kind of, keep track of those. Let me see if we can bring one of those up. I don't know if Gabe or Corey, you could grab one of those in a banner, but let me see. I think I have them as well.
Here, sorry, in the meantime, I'm just going to answer one question from
Please.
Roland
Please do.
Wick. So he's asking how to unfavorite a material that's been favorited. So in Ruby, you can currently favorite up to 3 materials. If the material that's been favorited the least recent, if you favorite a new material, a 4th one, that least recent one will get unfavorited. So there's no way of unfavoriting it by clicking. You have to sort of overwrite its existence as a favorite.
Yes, that's a good one. I had missed that question. Thank you. Really quickly, this first one from Instagram is regarding copy and pasting in Ruby. Can we copy paste within Ruby? It doesn't seem to allow this feature, but it would be so useful. And then I have some follow-up ones after that, but copy pasting, let's go that as a first one.
The little question mark in the upper right-hand corner is always going to give you your quick keys or background keys. A lot of people don't realize that little question mark is there.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that little question mark is there.
Yeah. Tim, if you click on that little question mark, it'll tell you the copy and paste. It's a Control-C, Control-V.
Yeah, the most important thing as well to note, if you are installing Ruby for the first time on a new device, you may need to enable the cookies for the site. Since Ruby can now copy and paste information from the web, so you copy paste an image from the internet, we needed to enable permissions for clipboard access. So it doesn't seem like it's showing up on the stream screen.
It usually
but if you go
on the screen, yeah.
It usually does, but I've had very rare cases where it has not popped up or someone has just by instinct disabled it. But you make sure the clipboard permissions are enabled. This is the most important step for it, because this is disabled. You're not going to be able to see copy and pasting. It's not going to work. If it does prompt you, allow it. If it does not prompt, go into the settings of your browser, find the permissions for Ruby, and make sure to enable a clipboard permission.
Awesome.
The other thing with copy and paste that a lot of people, it's not a right-click mode. So you can't right-click on an object and hit copy. You have to hit Control-C and Control-V. It's a computer keyboard. So the question mark will indicate or remind you what those quick keys are. It's not your traditional right-click and then copy, or there's no drop-down menu for copy. You have to hit Control-C and then Control-V on your keyboards.
Quick question. I'll throw this to you, Dave, from Tack Templates here and Tack threw in a few good questions, actually, but one from the chat here I'll grab. Question regarding object positioning in Ruby. When an object is rotated, the reference position for the object is not dynamic. So if you position based on the top left corner and you rotate the job 90 degrees counterclockwise, you now have to position based on the bottom left node. Is there any sort of workaround for that, or are you kind of having to actively shift the item in order to reference, in relation to obviously your laser head kind of thing?
So what they're saying is when they rotate it, it's still referencing the exact same nodes for orientational location. That is a good point. It's not something I've really even paid attention to. I don't usually use that feature. That is something we have to look into. But yeah, it seems to maintain that orientation. So if you rotate it 90 degrees, the same orientation node is still that same location because it sees it as that. It's not rotating the little 9 squares with it so that left corner is I see what they're saying. I don't know any way around that. That is a good point. It's not one I've come across because I've not needed it, but that is a good point and something maybe we need to look at our software guys. If it is rotated, the upper left-hand corner should be your reference location now at this point.
Or
that
allow.
That seems like it'd be a glitch.
It's not
dynamic like you can in like Photoshop or whatever, to choose, I want to rotate around this point or around this point, as opposed to just kind of a center rotation.
Yeah. And any other graphic software, once you rotate, that upper left still is the upper left. It's not, you don't have to find the one that was.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Tim, I interrupted you.
No, that's fair. Yeah, the anchor points are solely for positioning. They're not for rotation.
No,
they won't work for rotation. Rotation still works based off the center. So the anchor points are just for the positioning on the X and Y.
Yeah, but what he's saying is once it's rotated, it rotated 90 degrees, say, for example, the upper left-hand positioning location is now rotated with it. So, and that's the problem.
Question I will throw over to you, Tim, really quickly, and it's kind of a combination of a few questions, one from Isaiah here and one from Ashford's. Recognizing fonts. So if you have a file that you import into Ruby and the font isn't recognized, Ashford mentioned specifically with CDR files, they're having issues with fonts changing, as compared to appearing in job control, but not appearing when brought into Ruby, that kind of thing. Any suggestions for how perhaps to work around that? And then, any ways that if somebody's having issues with their fonts being replaced, any sort of troubleshooting suggestions you might have for them?
Right. Well, we have some actually in the chat that popped up as well. If you're using CorelDRAW, whatever software you may be using, if you convert the text to an outline or a curve, you're turning that font into a vector. So that's already one problem that we can resolve. Another method is on the managing page of Ruby, we do have a section labeled as fonts. It is currently in the beta stages, so it does have some little quirks to it. But the idea is that you'd be able to upload a font directly into Ruby. So instead of having to convert all of your fonts in your graphic design software to outline or to curves, Ruby already has the font integrated into its system. So it recognizes this font and will not change the font actively on you. This system is meant mostly for the run on Ruby machines, machines where you do not have direct access into the PC, so you can't directly install the fonts. So if you do not have the font directly installed on a machine like that, of course you have to import the font into Ruby or convert the fonts in your graphic design software. If you have a Speedy 100 and 300, a machine with a physical bridge connection, you could of course install the font directly onto your computer, and Ruby's going to see that font library regardless.
Makes sense.
It sees the fonts that are on the computer, and if it's a separate computer and that computer don't have the fonts, that's where the problem is arising. The other thing too is if for some reason the beta features don't show up, Tim, if you want to show them where to turn those off and on, sometimes the beta features are not turned on. So yeah, you can go down to the settings and then features, and then there's a little button in here so you can turn on these experimental features. So if you don't have that feature, make sure that it's on, and then you can literally just drag the font right into it, or you can use the import command as well and drop that font in. So if it's one you do regularly and have this problem, and so you don't have to convert it to curves every time, just drag it in there and that problem will go away.
It's interesting you mentioned the experimental features there, because there was one that popped up, and it's one that we had in another Instagram question. I don't mean to, sorry, I'm throwing curveballs at Gabe in the back here, just out of nowhere. I apologize. If Gabe can pop up that question from our Instagram, because it is actually to do with nesting specifically, which I believe is one of the experimental or one of the beta features that we may, am I right in saying we may be looking at implementing in a soon to come version? Is that fair?
It's being worked on. That's for sure. It is still in the beta stage, so we can't really make any definitive promises about what it's going to introduce in the future. And I can't really speak on the performance of it too well, since it is in the beta stage.
Yeah, and it is pretty slow right now for sure. Simple designs seem to work, but the more complex and the more immense the image, the longer it seems to take. And that is something they're going to be working on. That's why it is in beta. Once it goes out of beta, my hope is that it will speed up exponentially.
Yes, I assume that in the beginning they're working purely on functionality of the actual nest nearer to the end of like closer to the actual implementation of the feature into Ruby, full stop.
Yeah.
I had another great question here. Thank you guys again for all the great questions. let me see here, where to go? Isaiah, yes, that's exactly right. So the font has to already be installed on the computer. That's exactly it. I wanted to ask you guys what is potentially a stupid question, which is if somebody is seeing a font appear in job control but not in Ruby, I assume that is to do with the fact that Ruby would allow me to edit that font. So it still has to be an active, text piece, whereas in job control, it might just be appearing as basically a raster graphic at that point. I'm not going to be able to alter my text or change, let's say, a typo in job control. So because it's a raster graphic, I don't have to worry about it necessary. Dave, am I kind of on the right track there, I assume?
Yeah, I mean, job control is more like a printer driver. So whatever you sent, it actually sent. Ruby is more similar to a graphic design software. And so because we have editing capabilities, it's not like locking things. It's not just like converting them to be printed only. So it may not be it is a raster graphic, but it is not considered a editable object. And so there are some differences. That's why you would see those so that you can edit them. But as you can say, if the font is installed on your computer system, you should never run into this problem. But if you have the run on Ruby machine or you're running from a different location, if your other computer don't have that font, this is when you're going to have the problem.
Well, and I thought it was worth bringing that up too, because I also mentions if you're using a Mac OS and it being installed on the Mac font directory.
Yeah.
But if you are accessing Ruby remotely, you might have it installed on your Mac, but it will still have to be installed on whatever PC is specifically attached to the laser itself.
Or the run on Ruby PC or the run on Ruby
Exactly.
machine, the computer inside. And so that's where you would go from your Mac and literally go to the fonts and drag it from your Mac directly into that fonts. So it's on the run on Ruby machine and you won't have that problem anymore. You could literally drag them all on there, I guess. I don't know if there's a limit of fonts. Tim, have they indicated any type of limit of fonts?
In the source code, I think it's 99 or 999.
So not a huge amount.
No.
It's not like my directory where I got 50,000 fonts on a sub drive, just in case.
It's grim. If you look at my fonts directory, it's bad. I've got all sorts of dumb stuff in there.
You never know when you're going to need one.
You never know when you'll need that fake Disney font that someone made. A question here from Roland that I'll toss to you, Tim, if you don't mind, asking if there's a way to set the physical laser head to an exact coordinate within Ruby, an exact XY coordinate.
Yeah, unfortunately not. Not in Ruby, at least. Job control used to have that was a feature set that was available. I'm not sure if it's a feature that's going to be added in the future. I hope so, because it is a useful function. But at the moment, there's not a feature that allows you to do so.
Could I ask a stupid question? If you go to your prepare screen, like with LaserBed, it does give you the X and Y coordinates for your design. So if you clicked on your design and then set the X and Y coordinate of your design somewhere and then brought your laser head to the corner of the design, would that be an approximate?
It would, it would be an approximate location.
It's not what they're asking, to be fair. You're exactly right. It would be
you're sort of on the right track, because technically we can do that with the Speedy 100 and 300. With a connection with the physical bridge, you can set your design file in the XY coordinate that you need. As long as the lid's closed, you can actually grab the crosshair in the software and move it to the corner that you need. So it will be in the exact position, but on the 360 and 400 with the touchscreens, we can no longer use that feature. So it is possible with some of the machines, but not
but
the
you
newer
can't
ones.
type in a coordinate, though, is the problem, though.
No, you can't. No.
You can drag it to a specific location, but you can't say to go to 5 and 5 inches or something like that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
You could do that in Ruby or in job control.
Job control.
Yeah.
Well, again, something to maybe consider for the, we can suggest it for the future. I did, so you've mentioned this a few times, Tim. I want to maybe toss this over to Dave. We've talked a little bit about run on Ruby machines. Would you be able to give us just a really quick rundown if somebody's not familiar with what a run on Ruby, Speedy machine is, sort of what separates it from a standard Speedy machine and what the, how the experience with Ruby might be different between, if you're using a freestanding tower or a run on Ruby machine?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a good question, because it does confuse a lot of people sometimes. The run on Ruby machine is basically, it's got its own built-in computer. So it's really no different than when you have a non-run on Ruby and you have a computer next to it. but that computer that's plugged into your laser machine next to it is acting as the run on Ruby machine. So you would need that system in order to access other computers. The run on Ruby machine literally has a computer built inside the cabinet so that all the features that would be plugged into the machine are on board the machine. And that is the difference. So if you are sending from other computers, you don't actually need a computer sitting next to that machine because it's built in. That is really the benefit of that. So once it's connected to the network, any computer within your network can now access it. Your phones, your iPads, your MacBooks, any of those computers can access it, where a non-run on a Ruby machine has to have a computer plugged into it, and then that computer acts as the same as the internal one, and all other computers can now access that Ruby machine. So that is the real big difference. And then of course having the onboard touchscreen, so that you can actually see the design files and stuff like that, or what files in the queue. Because if you don't have a computer next to it, you still need to know what file is being run so that you can run it. Where if you have a computer next to it, you use that screen, and that is the real difference between the two.
Totally. Just as a very bare bones question too, but is there a base level of Windows that you have to have, be it on, the run on Ruby machines, again, because the PC is, built inside the machine, you're not so worried about that, obviously. But if I'm going to be running a freestanding tower, is there a basic version of Windows that I need to have in order to run Ruby?
Yeah, that is the difference. If it is plugged into the machine, it does have to be a Windows computer, and any version is going to work. Windows 10 and above is going to work, and then at that point, you can then run any additional computer as any operating system on top of that. But the original plugged-in computer that you have still needs to be Windows. And so the run on Ruby machine is built in, like I say. But if it's your own PC on an older model or a machine that doesn't support the run on Ruby, it still needs to be Windows. Or a version of Windows, any version.
Yeah, 100%. Quick question for Tim that I have from my my preset questions. There are occasionally times in this the prepare screen that we're looking at right here where the colors will look kind of faded or grayed out. If I ever see that, what does that imply? And then how would I go about kind of fixing that or reactivating my colors?
Yeah. So we can see here, in even my example right now, so the black template is clear. We can see it very clearly. It's not slightly opaque. The red line, though, we could see right through it. And if we just navigate to the right-hand side in our material dropdown, we could see where the red square is located under cut speed. That's the effect name. It's currently uncheckmarked, meaning anything that is red will be skipped. So I've asked the program to completely ignore any cut. So anything that's being ignored, anything that's not being recognized by Ruby, will be shown as an opaque line or as an opaque object. Once we click on that check mark, it's going to bring back the color. See, it's much more vivid red. If I uncheck mark the black, we're going to see a much more transparent black. So Ruby would only do a cut line in this instance. If I enable everything, it's going to do the engraving and cutting.
Perfect. Okay. So yeah, it's that transparency layer just seems to imply that the whatever either you don't have a process assigned to that color, or it's currently been kind of unchecked, essentially.
Yeah.
It's been turned off.
Yeah, it's used so you can see it for positioning, but it's not going to actually process.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. In terms of, I have a question here from the chat. Ashford asks about, I guess it kind of falls in line with your point about guides earlier, Dave, but is there a way to add markers to the bed like you could in job control? So this idea of adding little markers to be able to position different jobs potentially or different items all across your board.
Yeah, absolutely. And we discussed that in our last stream where the markers, and I actually have a video on our YouTube channel that shows the process because it's difficult. I can't just kind of show you. As you can see, Tim has it set up here in the F8 key on your keyboard. Now, there has been a few glitches in this area. Some expensive high-end keyboards, the F8 key would not work. And I'm not certain. It has definitely improved. But when you place a positional object on the screen and then you hit the F8 key, it's going to actually place a marker, and that marker you can snap to it, you can orient, you can move your red up pointer, you can hit it as many times as you want so you can position any location, and then have a reference location. So if you're going to be you need to locate something for the first time, put a marker on it, and then you're going to delete that object and want to put another object in the exact same location later. If you had placed a marker, it gives you that reference location, no matter where your focus head is after that point. So definitely a useful feature. Watch the video on our YouTube channel if you want to see exactly step by step on how that process works if you're unfamiliar.
Definitely. Yeah, it's a great video. I would say also, if you're setting up a jig for the first time, or reusing a jig, obviously markers is going to be a huge aspect of getting that all positioned and lined up perfectly so that you're marking exactly where you want to be. Quick follow-up question to that from Candace in the chat, where Ruby allows markers, but can you use move the laser head to a marker like you could in job control? I assume this kind of like our earlier discussion, because you can't necessarily move the laser head to a particular XY coordinate. I assume you can't necessarily move it to a marker either, at least for the time being.
No.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean, easy answer. Ask a simple question. Ask a simple question, get a simple answer.
Yep.
No worries. Quick question for you guys then, again, from our kind of pre-screen questions, the pre-questions from before. And again, if you guys are excited to have your question in the next version of the webinar, you can always submit it through Instagram, through the comments of this video, that kind of thing. I'd encourage that. So maybe I'll throw this over to Tim. If I'm putting together a file, I mean, in job control right now, as Dave kind of specified earlier, you can use job control like a print driver. So if I'm using Illustrator, Photoshop, Corel, whatever, I can just print directly from that software into job control and kind of go from there. Whereas Ruby has its own set of design tools on the kind of design page there next to at the top of the screen. Do I have to use the design tools in Ruby, or can I kind of set everything up ahead of time in my design software that I'm more comfortable with, and just kind of bypass that design screen more or less altogether?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there are two methods of doing so. Either you already have everything completely set up in your graphic design software, so all you have to do is just import the design into Ruby. After you've imported it into Ruby, you just head straight to the prepare page, which is the crosshair icon at the top of the page. And on the left-hand side, we have two menu drop-downs, either jobs or designs. If you open up jobs, you could add a design to the bed. So you don't need to open it up in the design page. We just have our design placed just like so. Move our engraving over to the right layer, and we have an engraving. So we can skip this area entirely. The other method of doing so is using the new profiles beta function. So much like the fonts area, profiles is a new testing area that we're using. A profile will essentially allow you to select a material, a coordinate, a rotation degree. So when you import a design using a profile, it will automatically place it at the coordinates that you need it to, running the material that you need to, and it will place it directly into the queue of your machine. So at that point, you're skipping the design page and the prepare page. You're going straight to the queue of the machine.
Wow.
Yeah, and you can just hit the import button, or you can literally drag it from another page or another screen and drag it right in, drop it in there, and it's literally running. So if you're doing the same thing in the same location on the same material all the time, set one of these up, drag your file or hit the import, and you're operational within seconds. It's the fastest, absolute fastest method to create it. I created a video, which is on our YouTube channel, to show you this process in action.
That's awesome. I was actually going to come back. We had a question about the profiles, the profile section here. I don't suppose, is it something I haven't played with it yet, guys? So this is the first time actually getting to look at it. Is it very long to set up? I guess, you know what, actually, rather than setting one up here, I'll go and watch Dave's video. I'm sure actually that's probably the far better way to do it. I would suggest you all do the same, but that's really exciting. I didn't realize it was quite that fast to be able to just kind of drag and go. That's great.
Yeah, it's awesome, especially for those folks out there that are running a different type of graphic, like tumblers, and you have a customized graphic, and you have a list of different graphics, and you just drop it into here, and everything, the rotary, the diameter, the material is all pre-profiled for you, and you set it up just like you would set up the original job, but you set it up as a profile, and you just drop it into one of these boxes based on the material selected. So if it's a show glass like he has here, or if it's a rotary, you identify it and name it. But if you watch the video, I show you how to set one up, how to profile it, and how to use it.
Awesome. Thanks. Another quick question here from TAC about TAC templates, pardon me, asking about the stamp feature in Ruby. They do quite a few stamps, but they find that the results are not quite the same between the ones they do in Ruby and the ones they do in Job Control. They're finding that the ones they do in Job Control tend to be a bit thinner than the ones in JC. Would we be able to just kind of take a quick look at what is there as stamp functionality, and then kind of maybe separate the troubleshooting aspect of it to a second part of the question? But you know,
Here, I'm just going to quickly generate
make a stamp.
A stamp, yeah. Just going to very, very quickly just make one up here. So I'm currently on the design page.
Mm-hmm.
Just
I
making
want this
up.
stamp. It's a good stamp.
Who
I often need to put hello.
I'm just going to align our tools here. And so after you're done making the design itself, we're just going to use our fit to design function. And there is a generate stamp button right on the design page. This at least just makes it quicker and easier to invert the design and mirror it for you. If we need a cut line, we could select one through the drop down. If we do not need a cut line, we simply have none as the option. We click on generate, and we can see on the left-hand side, we now have a new file at the very top of our design. It is our generated stamp. Now in the preview, we're going to see it as the inverted color. Once we click on it, we're not going to see it this way. So it is a bit confusing, but it is a stamp, I promise you. So now we're going to go to the very top right where it says create job. Once we click on there, our design is going to be saved. Our stamp is going to be brought in. It does not really get communicated too well, but we do need to set up this stamp so that we can actually engrave on it. But we have our own stamp material in this section. We could see that the black portion of this is still transparent, even though we do have engraving turned on. And this is because we have to go into a stamp mode on the prepared screen. The very top of the icons, the very, very last one is stamp mode. Once we click on that, our stamp comes to life, the colors come back, and right beside the design name and the push the laser button, we're going to have two new options appear for us. One is links, that is to link the rubber pieces to the main piece of rubber that you're cutting it out of, and shoulders. So we can set different shoulder heights. We also have a skip overlapping cut lines feature. So if you are overlapping a lot of the cut lines for your stamps, you could turn that feature on or off. And of course, links to create little tabs between the main piece of rubber and the little stamp itself that's being cut out. From this point onwards, it does work very similar to Job Control. I haven't ran into issues running stamps. I've had pretty consistent results across all the different shoulder heights. But I also don't work with rubber too often, so I may have been in the lucky few.
Just so everyone knows too, I just launched a complete step-by-step instructional video on this process using Ruby, deep dive with Laser Dave on rubber stamps. So it goes through the entire process of bringing it in, shows you what the different shoulders are, gives you a close-up view of all the different shoulder styles, the effects that each one of them does and how it's going to affect you on the material. Goes into the materials, shows you how to get the rubber stamps, the supplies, every aspect, every detail of it on a YouTube video just launched about 3 weeks ago. So take a look at that if you are interested in this, to see all the little differences and how the links work and stuff like that in a live version in examples.
Amazing. I know stamps, I mean, I'm in the same boat as you with this one, Tim, where I don't necessarily always have the opportunity to do a lot of stamps, but I know it is a lot of, like, it's a very popular application with a lot of our customers. Obviously, it represents a big part of our history as a company too.
Yeah.
So it's a really, it's a really, really important one. I think one thing I would recommend to TAC templates is if you're having specific issues with like, yeah, you have it here. So the stamps appearing more delicate and thinner with Ruby as when you're doing the same artwork. And go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
I want to mention something too. There is a slight glitch in the rubber stamps. If you do not turn relief mode on in your material parameter, because it doesn't come in defaulted, it will not add the correct shoulders, making it too difficult. So this is a known issue that will be solved. But yeah, if Tim, you want to show that down at the very bottom, you make sure this mode is turned on. And I do indicate this in the video as well. It is a known issue, and then your image will become too limited. Basically, it negates the shoulders from working. So you just need to make sure that's turned on. It should be turned on in rubber because that's typically what it's used for anyway. But if it is not, that mode needs to be turned on. Otherwise, your shoulders won't work.
Gotcha.
Which would make the image way thinner and not work as properly, which may be the issue this customer's having.
Yeah, it would make hosting the stream much more difficult. I will say also, if you continue to have an issue, definitely don't hesitate. I mean, we're here to help, obviously, but if it's something that is beyond the scope of the stream itself, don't hesitate to reach out to your local Trotec, obviously to your branch, to your tech support staff. They're there to help. They're, I mean, fantastic in terms of, you know, solving these kind of issues for you. Guys like Tim and Dave, and we have a wealth of really talented tech people in the background that I'm sure would be happy to help. Speaking of really popular applications, though, I will throw this over to you, Dave, to give Tim a bit of a break. Ashford asks about whether Ruby converts photos automatically so that they're ready to engrave. Obviously, photo engraving is another one that is highly requested. Another one that you've made some videos on. If I were going to bring in a raster graphic into Ruby to do, you know, a portrait engraving or to do a photo engraving, how much does Ruby help me? And are there tools built into Ruby to kind of help achieve? I know photo engraving is a tough one, but
yeah, that's why I have an hour seminar just on that one topic alone. It's not, I mean, it's definitely one of those things that I personally mastered, you know, spending 23 years doing it. Ruby does do a lot of things. It allows you to bring in a photograph. It's going to automatically take a color photograph and it's going to come in as grayscale. So you're not going to have to worry about that. You can click on it in the design screen and you can adjust the gamma, the midtones, the corrections if you want. So if it's engraving too dark, there are adjustments in there. Tim, I don't know if you want to bring one in here real quick since you have the screen here.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a photo.
But yeah, and then there are some tools. Now, it is not, say, for example, it doesn't give you like as much control over like materials. I mean, there's the third-party softwares out there like Photograph, for example, that literally convert a photograph to a dot pattern specific to a material. Ruby does not currently do that. It's going to take a grayscale, and then we can assign a dither pattern to it, like an order dithering or a Stucky pattern.
Jarvis.
Jarvis. It really, and that's personal preference. What I tell people is once you have a photograph and you want to run that photograph, try these different modes and see what you like best. Some people like one. It's like I say, it's personal preference. I personally like the order dithering. I think it's the most realistic, smoothest looking. But some people like the Jarvis and the other modes and stuff, the Stucky. And so those are different modes. I do have on my books a plan to do a photograph capability. But when you bring a photo in there, you can see there's a little pencil in the upper right-hand corner into here. And you can see, even if this was color, it's going to show as grayscale because the laser is not going to see color. So it doesn't matter if the original is in color or not. Once you bring it in, it's going to be. But this is going to give us the ability to kind of bring out some of those lights and those darks, allow the area to, because it may need to be adjusted based on what material you plan on running. Some materials work better for photos than others. What lens you're using, the type of material can make a huge difference on what the finished result is. Also, the quality of the photo. You got a poor, low resolution photograph. It may not produce the same effect as a higher resolution, high quality photograph. Good correction, good lighting. There's a lot of issues. You can go to our YouTube channel, Trotec Laser USA, type in photograph, and I have a 1 hour seminar. It's going to go through everything from lenses, types of materials, resolutions, photo softwares. Now, it doesn't go into depth with Ruby because it was produced prior to Ruby's advent, but I will be adding a photograph processing video, probably a deep dive video coming up on doing photographs with Ruby in the near future. So good segue for you there, Don.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. And I can't recommend Dave's videos on this enough, even just as a general process video because you brought up a few things that I think our customers are often faced with where, you know, when you're talking about doing engraving of any image that already exists, I mean, you guys tell me, you know, you have this experience far more than I do, but I think there is often a misconception that you can bring in, you know, a Civil War photo and it's going to be able to add resolution to this photo somehow. But really what the laser is trying to do is reproduce whatever input you give it.
It's WYSIWYG.
Exactly.
What you see is what you get.
What you get. So if you give it a really pixelated or older, lower resolution photo, let's say, what you're going to get is a perfect reproduction of those lower resolution images. Oftentimes, if you've got it, tuned just so.
And it's not a perfect reproduction. It's specific to the material itself. So if you got wood, you're going to see the grain pattern in that photo of that wood. So, and if it's a dark wood, you're going to see a dark photo on a dark piece of wood. If it's light wood, you got a dark photo on light wood. So there's so many different scenarios that could make or break this. And it's something I would not suggest offering to your customer base until you have practiced this process.
It's a tough one. What is your go-to material, Dave? Given the choice of any material in the world, what would be your go-to?
Well, I would say by far the most popular and easiest to process would be a light grained wood, like a cherry wood, because it's got high perceived value. Everyone likes it. It's pretty easy to do with the laser itself. It gives you good contrast. Everyone, seems to like it. Now, for contrast and detail, sticking with like an anodized aluminum or a laserable plastic, like a Trolase plastic, they're nice because they get consistent color. So it's a black and white material, gives you great contrast, good detail, but it's not as adopted by most people. When you see a piece of plastic engraved, it's like, heh. But when you see a piece of wood engraved, it's like, wow. And so again, that perception has a lot to do with it as well.
True. That's funny. I hadn't thought about it like that, but I agree. I think I would have said anodized aluminum as well. Just in my experience, in terms of ease of use, I find that anodized aluminum tends to be so forgiving by comparison to some other wood in particular. I've wasted a lot of pieces of wood doing bad photo engravings trying to get that to work back in the day. But again, my go-to thing for this is always exactly as you guys were alluding to before. What you see is what you get. So try to come in with the best quality photo you have ahead of time, and your result will reflect that quality. It's indicative of it, kind of.
And the other thing is sometimes you don't see what you see is what you get is not the case in some case, depending on the material. On wood, yes, but if, for example, if you throw anodized aluminum, it's not. When you engrave it, it will be inverted.
So it'll be inverted. You have to.
If you don't pre-invert the graphic, because the engraving, when you engrave on anodized, it turns white. And so every black dot on the screen turns white. And so you get that negative. So you go to engrave it, it looks negative. If you don't pre-invert the image, as Tim just did here, then the image will engrave negatives. And so it's kind of opposite. And you have to remember what color when the laser fires into the material, what color is that dot? When it fires one dot, is it darker or is it lighter? If it's darker, you do not need to invert. If it's lighter, you do need to invert the material. And a lot of plastics, acrylics, anodized aluminum all need to be inverted. Material or like stone, for example, darkened stone needs to be inverted. Woods, some plastics don't need to be, some plastics do. So it really depends. Make sure you run some tests.
Having either not inverted or looked at a portrait of a person that I've then flipped to the negative, I've seen some haunted images that I've created using photo engraving in the wrong way around.
It looks a little interesting.
Some really iffy stuff. You can see some videos where I've engraved some images of Gordie Howe, and rest assured, his many cursed cousins existed in the back of our shop somewhere when I was still learning that process. Horty Gow does exist. The rumors are true. We've nearly reached the top of the hour, guys. So I just kind of like our last stream, I'll give you a minute here to think about it. I want to ask if either of you guys has a question that we haven't been able to cover that you'd like to, or a topic that you'd like to talk about that we weren't able to discuss. Really quickly, while I let these guys think, I want to once again thank everybody who joined us today, whether you threw questions in chat or not. It's always very much appreciated. Again, I'm going to say it one more time. If you have questions about Ruby, if you run into anything while you're using your laser, I would encourage you to throw them in the comments of this YouTube video. I would encourage you to throw them in our Instagram, send them, direct to Dave or myself or whomever. Try to get them to us, and we will really do our best to cover them off in the next Ruby stream that we do next month. We always really appreciate getting to answer any questions about Ruby, but getting to answer the questions that you guys specifically are answering or asking is the most important thing, I think, as far as we're concerned. So, Dave, maybe I'll go to you first, or I'll put you in the hot seat. Is there any topic we didn't cover off today, or any question you've had that you feel is worth revisiting at the moment?
Not really. I mean, we've done pretty good. I mean, being that we've really kind of covered all the training, and then we did it last month and now this month, we've pretty well covered the majority of the questions that I have received. Some of the good ones today that I hadn't even thought of, like the photos, a great one, which is a great segue into the fact that I will be creating a video step by step for using Ruby. That's been a popular request lately. But other than that, we pretty well covered most of the most common questions, except some of the bizarre, obscure ones that are one-to-one type stuff, which doesn't affect other people.
Definitely. And I'm really glad we got to cover off some of the stuff like the rotations, the questions about some of those things that we can now bring back.
Point. Yeah,
and
not one I had even thought about.
Me neither, but I think a very, very good point. Tim, how about you? Same question. Any topic or anything that's come up recently that you felt like, it'd be worth mentioning this really quickly?
Yeah, very quickly. Ruby is not software as a service. I still see some misconceptions, people on Reddit, people on Facebook, posting that Ruby is a software as a service. It's not. It is not internet or cloud-based. You do not have to pay for it. If you buy a Trotec Laser machine, you have access to Ruby. That's just the big misconception that I see popping up still to this day. It's not. Do not worry.
Yeah.
No, it's not a subscription. It's not yet another
standard
subscription
with the machine and stays with your machine. And it costs nothing. So as long as you have a Trotec, you can use Ruby.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Tim, because I know it is something that I've heard feedback, regarding some other laser platforms that have like a subscription service or something you do have to pay for, and the frustration that can come with that because you've already bought the machine. So no, I think that's a good one to point out. Definitely. Yeah. Not software as a service. And to my knowledge, no plans to go in that direction. Again, it's you've purchased the machine, the software comes with it, end of discussion kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I think we can safely close the stream there. Once again, I want to give a huge thank you to both of my co-hosts today, to Dave and to Tim. Thank you guys for taking the time to join us. Thank you, of course, to Gabe and Corey and everybody who's in the background who's helping us bring up the questions, helping us with all the different chat interactions and stuff. That's always very much appreciated. And obviously, a huge thanks to you guys for joining us again this month. Again, our plan is to host these every third Thursday if we can, but you will always get notified on our social media accounts, all that sort of stuff about what's coming up. So no worries there. Just keep an eye, follow us on all the different places, and you'll get the advance warning. But with that, I will say thank you very much again for watching, and goodbye. We will see you guys again next month for another great Ruby stream. Take care, everybody.
Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.